Hi, I'm Bill Donohue, President of the Catholic League. This is Mike McDonald, Director of Communications of the Catholic League. Today, I want to talk about one of the subjects dealing with the celebration of our 250th anniversary. Some of the critics, the malcontents in our society, keep saying, well, don't forget about slavery. We don't want to forget about slavery. It is part of our history. It's an ugly chapter. But I want to say something which will correct the historical record. And I'm not saying this as a justification. I'm saying it as an explanation. It's one of the most common ways to live in the history of the world. Orlando Patterson is a Jamaican scholar at Harvard University, a sociologist, and he has studied this subject about as well as anybody. I've read all of his books on this subject. There's not a place on the globe that has not known slavery at one time or another. You go back into the ancient world, the Hebrews, the Greeks, the Romans, they all had it. It was so common that Aristotle couldn't envision a society without it. Jesus himself never even addressed it. Now, people think of slavery, they think of slavery as interracial. It was not interracial in most parts of the world. People enslaved each other. In this country, yes, there was a racial dimension to it. But quite frankly, it's a very common way to live, and that's why it's universal. Now, the question is, when did people get rid of it? They got rid of it in this country in the 1860s. They didn't get rid of it in Africa until the 1980s. All right, when this country was founded, the only place in the whole world that didn't have slavery was Britain. The rest of the world had it. You know, in places like China and Japan, they all enslaved their people. So the idea that somehow this is a unique institution to America is nonsense. What's unique is the fact that we found a way to get rid of it, which is more than we can say from other parts of the world today.
Yeah, and Bill, speaking to the ubiquitous nature of slavery, and also you brought up the British. I remember a couple years back there was a clip on CNN with Don Lemon, and he was interviewing some British historian, and they were talking a little bit about reparations and how those should be paid out.
He got his clock clean. Hillary Fordwich, she's a global consultant, very bright woman. An English gal, and she said to him, "Wait a minute. If there's going to be reparations, let's begin with who owes whom, and who began this whole idea." You know, there's this myth. It was portrayed by Alex Haley in his book Roots, which he said was half fact and half fiction. Well, I'm sorry, I'm an author. I write nonfiction books, and other people write fiction books. This blend is very intellectually dishonest. It's either fact or it's fiction. So what is it? You want to write a novel? Write a novel. So he gave the idea of Kinta Kinte, this African. He's in there playing the bongos in the middle of in the woods, and all of a sudden the white man comes along and he enslaves him. Well, that's a fairy tale. It didn't happen that way. As this woman Hilary Fordwich said, listen, what happened is the Africans put their own people in cages, and they had them sitting there on the beach. No white man had to run into the woods to try and find an African and grab him and make him a slave. They literally bought them from their own African slave masters. Now, I'm simply saying this is something that's been going on throughout history. In this country, the English enslaved the Irish and put them on the boats and made them do the most dangerous work because there was no place for the Irish to be enslaved in this country. So all the dirty work and dangerous work was done by them. They were dispensable. So nobody comes to the table with their hands clean on this kind of thing. And so when they ask about reparations, she said, wait a minute, let's go back on the supply chain on this thing. Who started this whole thing in the first place? Where did we get the African slaves? And there's another thing, too. What about reparations to white people in this country? I'm talking specifically from around 1550 to about 1780. The Muslims in Africa, in northern Africa, Barbary Coast, they enslaved more white people than we enslaved black people in this country. As Thomas Sowell, the great black economist, said, is any going to be fool enough to go there and ask the Muslims in North Africa today to pay us reparations for enslaving the white people there? I mean, the hypocrisy. None of this stuff is taught in the schools. We know that, yes, whites enslaved blacks in this country. How many people know that black people enslaved black people in this country? There were blacks who were free. What about the Indians? Okay? They enslaved black people. So this is an ugly institution. It has unfortunately been universal. and people stop pounding their chest about saying like, well, America, it's like as if we invented slavery.
Yeah.
It's insane.
And right, it's not taught in schools, and I think another thing that gets frequently just glossed over is that in the Constitution there were actually steps taken at the time of the founding to water down slavery. What was in the Constitution about slavery?
Well, in Article 1, Section 9, they make it clear that they don't mention the word slavery, by the way, in the Constitution. Slave master doesn't exist. Man and woman don't exist either in the Constitution, right? These people were very neutral, so to speak, very inclusive, I guess, if you want to use the terms today. But they made it clear, if you read that section in the Constitution, they don't use the words transatlantic slave trade, but that's what they meant. They basically put a time capsule on it. 1808, we end this. You couldn't have had a union in the beginning if, in fact, the slave states were told to give up slavery at that point. So what they did is they set up the Declaration of Independence, 1776. Those are the principles, inalienable rights. And then you have a constitution, which says in 1808, you're going to stop the slave trade. The person who was president at that time, Thomas Jefferson, is also the one who wrote the Declaration. And he was the one who immediately in 1808 did away with the slave trade. So that, again, is not taught in the schools.
No. And, again, as you're mentioning, all these places had slavery. The United States, following the lead of Great Britain, brings it to an end in the 1860s, as you mentioned. And Lincoln and the radical Republicans at the time really tied that into the Civil War. What arguments were they making to successfully bring about, because it just wasn't, the Battle of Gettysburg and all these Civil War type themes. There were actual legal, moral, rational arguments that they made.
Well, Lincoln, look, he didn't use the term natural law, neither did Aristotle. But Aristotle is the one who gave us the idea of natural law. And then Aquinas and all the great Catholic theologians gave it a Catholic cast to it. Natural law basically means that everyone knows in their heart of hearts if something is intrinsically wrong, independent of culture. He also understood such a thing as natural rights. Now, in the Catholic tradition, we understand that every person is a child of God, independent of any kind of demographic profile. So the question before Lincoln is this: I don't care if most people still want slavery. He understood that he had a duty, invoking natural law and natural rights, to put an end to it. And that's what he did. And the Supreme Court was wrong in 1858 in the Dred Scott decision. They should have understood natural law and natural rights. In any event, he rested his case on those principles. And if you don't have a country which respects natural law and natural rights, what principles do you have then? Everything is up to a vote. So, I mean, there are a lot more left-handers, a lot more right-handers there are in this country than there are left-handers. Couldn't we have a vote which say, should left-handers be the slaves of right-handers? You could put it on the ballot, and you know what would happen. Would that therefore mean that we're going to have slavery? Of course not, because we have a Bill of Rights which prohibits it. So unless you have these principles in writing and codified like we do, you're likely to wind up with these kind of conditions. We had these problems to begin with, but we had a way. We had a legal, principled mechanism called the Declaration, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights to get rid of slavery and to ensure justice and liberty for everybody. And that, again, is not taught in the schools. What in the world is going on in the schools?
Indoctrination.
Yeah.
They're just making these kids believe anything. And
Yeah, we invented evil.
dangerous.
Yeah. Well, I hope this has been instructive, people. Take a look at our website. You'll find out more. Thank you.